My daughter came home crying after she was invited to a Christmas party at my husband's parents' house. When I asked her why she was upset, she handed me a gift-wrapped present without saying a word. "Mom, look at this. Why did this happen to me?" she asked. I was shocked when I opened the present. It wasn't something meant for a child. I quickly went to the police and asked them to find out who gave this present to my daughter. The police investigation revealed that Ed was the one who sent it, and it caused a lot of trouble with our family members. Ed faced serious consequences for his actions. I'm in my 40s and my husband is in his 30s. We both work at the same company. I started working there when I was in my mid-30s after leaving my previous job because my boss insulted me at a party. He called me an old maid because I wasn't married by the time I turned 30. But at my current job, people are judged by their skills, not their age or gender. My husband, who is now my boss, helped me settle in when I first joined the company. We got married quickly, and now we have a daughter in 3rd grade. She's a quiet girl who loves to read and is always kind to others. My husband's sister is quite troublesome, and we don't get along well. Thankfully, I have a good relationship with my in-laws, which makes things a bit easier. My sister-in-law, who really loves her brother, doesn't seem to like that I'm older than him and married to him. She made fun of our quick wedding, calling me names like old hag and suggesting I was too eager for marriage. Despite her comments, she used to visit us often when we first got married. Being older when I had a baby made it harder to get my body back in shape. She'd make rude remarks about my body, saying things like my belly was wrinkled and saggy from childbirth. She even joked that it would droop to the floor. She said I'd probably go gray from the stress of having a baby. Every time she left, she'd make mean comments about me getting dumped by her brother as I aged. I try to brush off her hurtful words, but it's hard not to feel bad about being older than my husband. I distract myself to avoid thinking about it too much, but her laughter still echoes in my mind sometimes. Shortly before I was due to give birth, my sister-in-law's pregnancy was revealed, and she also had a quick wedding. It seemed like she didn't care about anyone else's feelings. After that, she stopped visiting us, and we didn't see each other much because she moved to another city to live with my in-laws after getting married. I was relieved not to have to deal with her sarcastic comments anymore, and I could focus on getting ready for my baby's arrival. When I finally gave birth to a healthy baby girl, it was a bit tough, and it took some time. But my husband was by my side the whole time, holding my hand and cheering me on. When we heard our daughter cry for the first time in the delivery room, my husband thanked me and said, "You did great." We both cried tears of joy together. 7 months after our daughter was born, my sister-in-law had a baby boy. Then she started coming to our house, even though it was a long drive for her. She'd make mean comments to me, comparing our children. She'd say things like, "It's obvious that a kid born to an older mom would have a wrinkled face. My kid's skin is so smooth, isn't it?" The age of the mother at birth really affects the child. I didn't know how to respond to her hurtful words. I was too busy dealing with the challenges of being a new parent to pay much attention to her. The problem was, she never brought any baby supplies with her when she visited. She'd come without spare diapers or formula, and then take a bunch home, saying she didn't want to run out. She'd even take unopened formula with her, like it was normal. I couldn't understand why she would insult me and then take things from our house. But then she stopped coming. My husband said that her husband's job required them to move to a different state. We enjoyed some peaceful times until our daughter started elementary school and found out her cousin, my sister-in-law's son, was also enrolled there. We moved back here because of my husband's job transfer. That's when I knew my peace was over. Even though my daughter and her cousin had different parents, they got along really well. My daughter, who was older and very sincere and kind, looked after her cousin. He, on the other hand, was very popular and had lots of friends. When they both reached the 3rd grade, they ended up in the same class. One day, my daughter won an award for a reading reflection she wrote for a summer project. It was so good that it even got published in the newspaper. The whole family and relatives were talking about it. During a break between school terms, we were visiting my in-laws. This time, maybe because they heard about my daughter's award, some relatives were there who usually didn't get together. But my sister-in-law wasn't happy that our family was getting so much attention. She complained, saying, "It's not fair. That book was supposed to be for my son, but your daughter took it." The truth was, they had just swapped books. They couldn't decide which book they wanted to read, so they agreed to swap after finishing. After they both finished reading both books, they talked about it and decided together which book report to write. My nephew liked the book my daughter read first, so she let him have it. When I explained the situation to my sister-in-law, she accused me of writing the award-winning reflection for my daughter. I used to write novels as a hobby in college, something she must have heard from my husband. Unbeknownst to me, she started spreading rumors among the parents at school, saying I had a connection with one of the judges and asked for a favor for my daughter's writing competition. My daughter heard these rumors and became really upset. She even stopped reading her favorite books, feeling downcast. Seeing my daughter so upset, not just because of me, but also because she became the target of mean comments, I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to talk to my in-laws about everything that had happened, but I first confessed everything to my husband. It was the first time I told him about all the things his sister had done to me since we got married. She even took clothes I bought for my daughter when she was a baby, saying babies couldn't tell the difference between boys' and girls' clothes. She also insulted me and called me fat when I was pregnant, saying I looked like a sumo wrestler and should try a sumo stomp. My husband was furious, rightfully so, and he said it's not something to say to a pregnant woman. He called his sister's actions theft. He decided we should share everything with his parents, and he would be the one to tell them. So my husband and his parents went to my sister-in-law's house together. She was surprised to see them, but happy to see her beloved older brother. However, she ended up getting a harsh lecture from him and started to resent me even more. "You snitched to my favorite brother, you old hag. Acting like a tragic heroine must feel good, right? It's the worst for me, though. Take responsibility, you old ma," she said. At first, I thought she might be calling to apologize, but it turned out she just wanted to vent her anger at me. So I stopped answering her calls and let them go to voicemail. After about 2 weeks, the calls stopped, and I thought she had lost interest since I wasn't responding. But later, I found out that wasn't the case. In December, my in-laws organized a children's Christmas party for the first time. I was curious why they decided to do it this year. My daughter was thrilled to receive an invitation because she had fond memories of Christmas parties from her kindergarten days and was hoping her elementary school would have one too. However, her school didn't celebrate Christmas due to their policy on religious events. Why argue about religious reasons when Christmas has its own special meaning? I wondered. But apparently, some parents had strong opinions about it. I told my daughter we could have our own celebration at home since we did that last year. She was excited about the party and enjoyed picking out a gift for the gift exchange. The invitation for the party asked us to bring a gift worth around $20, so my daughter and I spent some time shopping at a nearby mall to find the perfect present. She chose one of her favorite picture books to share her thoughts with whoever received it. On the day of the Christmas party, she carefully held the present she picked and happily headed to my in-laws. Their house is just a 10-minute bus ride away from the bus stop, which is only a minute's walk from our house. I let my mother-in-law know that my daughter was coming, and she offered to pick her up. 10 minutes later, my mother-in-law called to say that my daughter had arrived safely, and I finally felt at ease. But 30 minutes later, everything changed. I had expected my daughter to be enjoying the Christmas party by now, but suddenly I heard the front door open. It was a weekday and my husband was at work. I was working from home because my daughter was on winter break. The unexpected sound of the door opening alarmed me, so I rushed to the entrance only to find my daughter sitting on the floor crying. I asked her what happened, and she handed me a gift-wrapped bag. She said I would understand once I looked inside, so I opened it. Inside was a torn-up newspaper with my daughter's reading reflection printed on it, along with a message card. The card, written in red ink, said, "If you get too cocky, you and your family will end up like this stuffed animal." There were also patterns that looked like blood splatters. Digging further inside, I found a stuffed animal that had been torn to pieces and covered in red ink. It was too cruel to be a joke. There was no way my daughter would coincidentally receive such a gift. During the gift exchange, my daughter explained that my sister-in-law had prepared this special present for her. Even though we agreed as a family that adults shouldn't personally prepare gifts for the child-focused Christmas party, my sister-in-law was at my in-laws' house. I didn't accompany my daughter because of this agreement. However, my sister-in-law's presence caught me off guard. My mother-in-law would have informed me if she had known my sister-in-law was there, but she didn't notice her. "Didn't you tell Grandma?" my daughter asked. My mother-in-law had always encouraged us to let her know if her daughter did or said anything to us. I had also communicated this to my daughter. When I tried to tell my daughter what happened, my aunt interrupted and said she hadn't called for me. She explained that only children with a connection to missionary schools were allowed. My daughter asked, "What's a missionary school?" And I was speechless. Just this spring, one of our relatives had passed the entrance exam for a missionary school, which had become a big topic of conversation. My sister-in-law's son also attended a missionary kindergarten. My sister-in-law must have thought this topic would be a way to scold my daughter. I told my daughter to stay inside with the gift she received while I rushed to the police station alone. I argued that it was a serious threat, but the police suggested resolving the matter within the family. However, I insisted that threats can be valid even among family members or siblings. Not only were there threatening words, but also a threatening letter and a mutilated stuffed animal, which I argued was malicious. Fortunately, a female police officer happened to pass by and empathized with how scared my daughter and I must have been. After I provided my sister-in-law's address, she promised to go and warn her right away. My wishes were fulfilled in the end, but I shudder to think what might have happened if that officer hadn't passed by. It was disheartening to realize that some members of the police force still wouldn't take action unless there was an actual incident or accident. I worried about how I could protect my daughter in case of an emergency. That evening, when my husband returned from work, I told him everything that happened. He was furious with his sister for ruining our daughter's fun out of spite. He immediately called his parents to express his anger, since the Christmas party was happening at their house and they supposedly didn't know anything about it. They claimed they had no idea my sister-in-law was there. They had left the back door unlocked, so she might have entered that way. My mother-in-law apologized for not paying attention to who was coming and going as she was busy picking up other grandchildren nearby. My father-in-law had been away at work during the day. The Christmas party was mainly organized by the older nephews and nieces, and my mother-in-law had mostly left it to them. Later, the police officer firmly warned my sister-in-law. From what I heard, she was told that any further reports could lead to more than just a warning, so things should be fine for the most part. However, my in-laws were upset by my sister-in-law's actions, which had escalated to involve the police. It could potentially lead to criminal behavior. As a result, they called a meeting with both our family and my sister-in-law's family with the parents present for discussion. When we arrived at my in-laws' house for dessert, my sister-in-law and her husband hadn't shown up yet. They finally appeared right at the last minute, with my sister-in-law clearly sulking. It was obvious she wasn't remorseful and resented me for involving the police. Her husband, sitting next to her, seemed clueless about why they were summoned. He'd appeared to have been called without being informed of the reason. During the discussion, he was shocked to hear for the first time about all the things his wife had done to our family, unaware that things had gotten to this point. He profusely apologized to us, feeling sorry. Seeing his reaction, my in-laws asked my sister-in-law if she had anything to say, but she just responded with, "Not really." She didn't seem to understand why she needed to apologize, acting as if she hadn't done anything wrong. I didn't do anything bad. The police came but didn't arrest me, right? So that means I didn't do anything wrong. Everyone else was dumbfounded by her logic. It was like they couldn't close their mouths from shock. Lecturing her seemed like a waste of time. Then, unexpectedly, my sister-in-law's husband announced he was divorcing her. We were all puzzled because it seemed like they had a good marriage. Seeing our surprised looks, he confessed that he had reached his limit with her behavior since they got married. He hadn't complained about her not doing housework during pregnancy, and he hadn't scolded her for neglecting childcare and going out to have fun, thinking it was stress from being a new parent. But her carelessness with housework once led to a small fire that forced them to move. She, being vain, had insisted on their son attending a prestigious kindergarten when she heard other neighborhood kids were applying. But he didn't get in due to a lack of preparation. Embarrassed, she forced another move. While his job did involve transfers, they weren't as frequent as their moves suggested. He revealed that the frequent moves were not just because of his job transfers, but also to maintain my sister-in-law's image. After failing the kindergarten entrance exam, she tried to get him into an international kindergarten. And when that didn't work out, they barely managed to get him into a missionary kindergarten. Choosing a public elementary school was only because their son wanted it, and my sister-in-law reluctantly agreed. After her husband supported their son's wishes, he feared their son would be sacrificed for her vanity and had been considering divorce already. With her harassment coming to light, he felt he had no other choice but to announce it now. My sister-in-law, somewhat aware of her actions, didn't dispute what he said but seemed taken aback by the divorce. "Wait, what do you mean divorce? You never showed any signs of this," she said, suddenly starting to apologize to us, thinking it would help. "It was just a joke, right? Just a little prank. I never thought you'd take it seriously," she insisted. "A joke? A prank? Those are things done among people who trust each other. My daughter knows all about what you've done to me. How could she take it as a joke? Moreover, that hostile message was too much for a third grader. Even adults would be scared to go outside if someone threatened them," I told her. Her husband criticized her, asking if she could say the same thing to her own child, and said her actions were unimaginable for a parent. Just because someone is a parent doesn't mean they have parental feelings. There are people who can't be real parents, and she is probably one of them, my husband said sternly, seeing her crying. Crying wouldn't fix anything at her age, and she needed to stop thinking tears would get her out of trouble, he added. She cried even more, insisting she did nothing wrong and wasn't to blame. "Why am I the only one being blamed? Is everyone ganging up on me?" she cried. "It's all because my brother married an older woman. My brother's wife should be smart, beautiful, and so on. Our marriage and her harassment are totally separate issues, right?" We already thought she was a bit off, but even my husband was astonished at her stupidity, I explained. No one tried to comfort the inconsolable sister-in-law. The discussion couldn't continue, so we decided to adjourn for the day. Her husband had to drag her to the car and take her home. Their divorce eventually happened, but it was a messy affair due to her stubborn refusal to agree. Her son's accidental revelation might have been a factor in her agreeing to the divorce. He, without any malicious intent, simply shared what he saw with his friends. However, the parents who heard the rumor did not remain silent. After winter break at school, my nephew talked about having a Christmas party with his older cousins. It seems that at school, they used a class to have a presentation about their winter break memories. Among stories about what they did on New Year's Day and video game consoles they received as Christmas gifts, we all exchanged presents. Then I saw my mom giving my cousin a special present just for her, and I thought it was unfair. When the teacher asked what kind of present it was, my nephew described exactly what he saw. "I saw it. The cute stuffed animal was all torn up with lots of red stuff on it, like blood," he said. The story became a topic of discussion among the school teachers and escalated into a major issue after the children who heard it went home and told their parents. My daughter's still heartbroken, hasn't been able to go back to school since the Christmas party. Everyone knew that my daughter and her cousin were related, so they speculated that her absence was related to the incident, and they were right, but I wished it had gone unnoticed and left undisturbed. I had planned to wait until my daughter was ready to return to school on her own terms. Her cousin didn't share the story to be funny, but rather to find a way to stop his mom's terrible behavior. He too was hurt by her actions. Learning this, her husband realized he couldn't delay the divorce any longer and agreed to her demands in exchange for her consent to the divorce. By then, she had become infamous in the neighborhood as the woman who threatened children, and no one wanted anything to do with her. She was even pelted with garbage when walking outside. Feeling cornered, she agreed to the divorce, thinking returning to her parents' home would end her nightmare. Her husband had no intention of giving up custody, but she readily relinquished it. "I'll remarry someone much better than you. Kids are a nuisance when remarrying, so I don't need him," she said in front of her son. But he stood up to her. "I don't need a terrible mom like you. I have a cool dad, and that's enough. Never show your face to my cousin again," he said. She left with a final retort, "You'll regret this later." However, it was my sister-in-law who ended up in tears when she triumphantly returned to her parents' house. They turned her away at the gate, banning her from ever showing her face there again. With nowhere to go, she resorted to spending nights with random men in exchange for meals and a place to stay. When she couldn't find a man, she borrowed money from dangerous sources and spent her nights out, accumulating massive debt. Her debts became so overwhelming that no amount of part-time work could cover them, and eventually, she disappeared. My husband and his parents decided not to file a missing persons report, reasoning she's not a child anymore. They agreed it's better this way, not willing to take care of her if she returns. Since then, my daughter has been able to go back to school on her own. Her former brother-in-law didn't move, so her cousin still attends the same school. He now says it's his turn to protect her, and they have become closer than ever. This has led to a deeper friendship between us and my former brother-in-law, as our children have brought us together. My in-laws call both my daughter and their grandson their dear grandchildren, stepping in as his guardians when he can't do to work. With my sister-in-law gone, there's no more tension, and we have built a very trusting and reliable family relationship.